this is the crucial point. It's the first time in human history that technology not only augments human labor, it's not that we're using technology to make our work more efficient, to make it more productive, not in a quantitative way, but it's the first time in human history that there is a qualitative change, that a technology can surpass human workforce, human labor.
GM, good morning. Welcome to the Milk Road AI podcast, the podcast that teaches you to follow earnings, not vibes. I'm your host, Kyle Reedhead. Today's guest is Kim Isenberg, co-founder and chief editor of the AI media startup, Superintelligence. Today, we're going to discuss how AI is changing the macro landscape in terms of the labor market and how humans work. We'll discuss what this means from a geopolitical perspective and what this race looks like from the perspectives of China, from US and Europe, although they don't really make up a huge component of this, as we'll talk about. And of course, we'll talk about what parts of AI are overvalued, undervalued. Are we in a bubble? Are we not in a bubble? There's a lot we're going to cover here in terms of AI and the space and the innovation and how it's going to change the way the world works. So a really, really interesting conversation today with Kim. And by the way, today's episode is brought to you by Reserve DTFs. Get exposure to the entire crypto market in one single token. All right, without further ado, let's bring in Kim and get started. Let's start this off by trying to understand how you guys got into this. Kim, I'd love to hear how you went full-time into AI. I know you're writing this newsletter now with Superintelligence. What sort of drove you into that? I know it was a kind of a hobby at the beginning, just AI, and now it's kind of your whole life. It's the whole world, which is probably true for a lot of people. Walk me through the catalyst of when you realized, oh, I need to go full-time in this.
So I think it all started roughly 2.5 years ago, and I was working full-time at a completely different job. I studied sociology and law at a university in Germany. I was like working full-time, and for some reason it became like this big echo in the news that there is this new thing called artificial intelligence, and it popped up, and it, out of curiosity, I digged into it. And the moment I started using it, it was like a shock, a revelation that there is a revolution happening in front of us. And I witnessed all the free time I had during my full-time work to dig into this topic and try to understand what actually is really happening in this field, but also in our society. So I created this account on X. I never actually used Twitter or X before, just out of curiosity and get into contact with other people and try to discuss this whole AI revolution. And for some reason, in all modesty, people actually liked what I also wrote and researched about this topic. And my account grew and became bigger. And I invested more and more time into researching all this AI topic. And later, I think a year later or so, Dan and Peter reached out to me and asked if I'm willing to jump into their newly created company called Superintelligence as an editor-in-chief. And it was actually a pretty hard decision for me. I'm married and we just moved into a new house. But I think this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I jumped into it. And now I'm doing this what was once a hobby as a full-time work, and it's the best thing I've ever done.
I love it. And for the listeners, if you're not reading that newsletter called Superintelligence, I highly recommend you go do. It is incredible information if you want to learn about what's happening in AI and how it's essentially changing the world. Okay, Kim, there's a lot of themes around AI, right? AI is really starting to tap into everything pretty much in the world, but you focus on sort of 6 reoccurring themes in the Superintelligence newsletter. Can you just first tell me what are those 6, and then just walk me through why you focus on those?
Yeah, amazing question. So we have these recurring themes: politics, longevity, robotics, research, new models, and finance. And every Saturday I write another deep dive into one deep topic. And so these are the recurring themes. I think it's necessary to understand that a sole focus on AI is not enough to understand what actually is happening. And especially one is not able to grasp the near future that is occurring in front of us. What am I trying to explain about this? So if we're looking at the geopolitical agenda, we have like the 3 main domains. We have China, we have Europe, and we have the United States. There is a huge difficulty and a huge obstacle, especially for Europe, because they are lacking of investments. They are lacking of investments in data center. They are lacking of investments in foundational models. They rely on Azure and Microsoft. They rely on models that are trained and being used outside of Europe. The only real competitor is Mistral. So you cannot understand the geopolitical struggle they're facing without focusing on the financial market, without focusing on the politics, especially when you're looking, for example, in Europe and the EU AI Act. That is a big obstacle for AI companies like Meta, who resigned on training the models in Europe, for example. So, but not only that, it's also that AI is like helping to develop other areas, for example, longevity. We have like AlphaFold. Demis Hassabis just received the Nobel Prize last year for AlphaFold, for the prediction of protein folding. And it's like a revolution in biology and chemistry, which also helps to further accelerate the developments in this area. So people usually, when they're not in the AI tech bubble, they're like thinking AI means having a chatbot, but that's not it. AI is so much more than just having ChatGPT all around. So it's necessary for our readers to understand when we're talking about AI, it usually not only tackles our other fields, but it's also like interdependent. So they rely on each other. It's like an interconnection between those fields that enhances and develop them, those fields. Yeah.
Guys, if you're still listening to the show, it means you have a huge appetite for AI and for learning about this kind of stuff. And our new newsletter for AI just came out. It comes out Mondays and Wednesdays too. It's free and it's on our website. So make sure you go and check it out right now.
Yeah, very interesting. I think AI is just a lot bigger than most people realize. And when we start to think about its impacts in longevity or healthcare, its impacts in the geopolitical world, its impacts in literally everything, it's kind of hard to realize and think about, where the heck the world is even going. So there's so much. For you though, what is the thing that maybe you're most excited about that's happening in AI like right now? Is there something that really catches your eye that you're really following, or is it just you keep it broad and you want to see everything?
It's a tough question because there is so much happening at the same time. Just let's have a quick look back on what happened just in 12 months. So we received not only reasoning models, which are now able to tackle much more difficult problems. For example, we not only got tool usage that AI models, for example, can use Python tools for mathematical calculations, but things like deep researches, right? So I mean, tasks that usually is done by consultants. We receive so many more opportunities literally each week. It's like a revolution unfolding in front of us. So when you're asking what I'm most excited about, I actually don't know. And I don't, and I actually also don't know what is coming. We're now talking about 2025 of the year of agents, and I think we are now in December that agents are really a thing that is happening, and it will really have a big impact on society. But I mean, I would like to point a little bit more on the worries I have. So on the one hand, obviously, artificial intelligence is like increasing and better all of our lives, right? So our work, our labor is done much easier. We have like these assistants helping us with all the tasks we have. But when we are looking, for example, at AI and robotics, it's like figure the US robotic companies try to use the robots in the car manufacturing, BMW, and it worked out so well, so good that they're now trying to use the robots in the like the daily manufacturing work. And this is a big threat that is coming in front of us for the labor market. Dario Amodei, for example, is pointing to this regularly. He is like scared of having unemployment rates of 10 to 20%. And I think it's not even exaggerated, because this is the crucial point. It's the first time in human history that technology not only augments human labor, it's not that we're using technology to make our work more efficient, to make it more productive, not in a quantitative way, but it's the first time in human history that there is a qualitative change, that a technology can surpass human workforce, human labor. And this is the really new thing people need to understand and to grasp. Having like robots with these AI features that can work 20 hours a day, 365 days a year is something a human can't compete with, right? And this is something I have my eyes on. I think we need to have a spotlight on. And I think this is something we need to discuss as a society, because this is something that is coming very, very quickly.
And well, actually, I was just going to ask on timelines of that. So, there's talk that, humanoid robots, all that, it's coming. Elon talks about it a lot, as you mentioned, Figure in the US, there's tons of videos out there now. But it doesn't feel like they're ready for full scale yet. There is robotics within factories, like what Amazon is doing. Okay, that is happening. But do we have the full general purpose humanoid robots today? I would say, and I would argue, probably not. And so the question is, do we need that for the labor market to really get impacted? And then how long is that going to take? Is that a year away? Is that 6 months away? Or is it many, many years away and we're sort of over exaggerating? What do you think? What's your opinion there?
This is an amazing question. And I've thought about this a lot. From my perspective, what I think is, no, we don't need general robotics, because when you're looking at the labor market, when you're looking how human work in the labor, they're usually very specified. Their tasks they're very monotone, right? In the car manufacturing, it's not that you need like a highly sophisticated, highly intelligent being, but you need to do repetitive tasks very efficiently, very long. You need high duration. And this is what robots can do very, very well. They are not only accelerating development at an insane pace, but especially hands, for example, right? So why do we need humanoid robots? Because we build the world around us humans. This is why they need to be like us. This is why they need to be developed like us, right? This is why they need to look like us and work like us. And when you look how incredible these hands already work, then you can create an understanding of how near the possibility is that they really will be implemented in this work in progress. But we're now focusing only on the blue collar market. And this is actually the market that is predicted to be pretty hard to tackle by AI. But when we're looking at the white collar market, right, like the day-to-day jobs at a computer, repetitive tasks, this is so easy to be replaced already. There are German law firms who use AI tools to do all their grunt works already. There are AI tools for radiologists that like explain in detail the images that were created. So much work is already replaced by AI, and this is just the beginning. And one more sentence, because people also miss this. The development is exponential. It's not a linear development, but it's going exponential. Yep. So what we're seeing now is so hard to predict in 12 more months, right?
Oh, yeah.
ETFs provide investors with a structured, disciplined, and diversified approach to crypto, which is cool, but the world is moving on chain. We need a crypto-native equivalent. That's exactly what Reserve's decentralized token folios, DTFs, bring to the table. Reserve DTFs are rule-based baskets of crypto assets packaged into a single token, like CoinMarket's CMC20, crypto's version of the S&P 500. Go to milkroad.com/reserve to find out what's on offer.
It's so difficult. So you mentioned I think it was a quote from someone else that said 10 to 20% unemployment as a result of this. We have had this prediction many times before with tech, right? We said it with the Industrial Revolution, with the internet, et cetera. Like, all this was going to take over and we're going to have this crazy unemployment. And we humans tend to work its way around it and find new things and new jobs. And unemployment doesn't stay at 20%. What makes you think that this time is different? Right now, so far in the numbers, we are starting to see an impact in the labor market. It is not necessarily increasing unemployment, but it is, companies are making more earnings, but they're not necessarily hiring anyone new. And so we're not hiring more people, but we're not necessarily firing a ton of people yet, but this definitely could come. Do you think that what ends up happening is this innovation ends up just creating net new jobs, right? Like the internet created, bloggers, or what we're doing, podcasters, which didn't exist previously. Is there going to be net new jobs that come from AI, at least maybe in the short term, for the infrastructure build out or something? Or what's your kind of take here? Are we just going straight into 20% unemployment?
This is a fantastic question. And really, this is so interesting. Okay, I agree that we're not seeing this high amount of layoffs. We're not seeing like these 100,000 or 1 million people being laid off. But what we're seeing is that juniors are not being hired anymore at the rate or the amount we've seen the last decades. There was this MIT study just released, I think, 2 weeks ago that stated we could already replace roughly 11% of all human workforce in the United States. And I think it was published today at CNBC that Sundar Pichai also reiterated that we could really see a huge impact on the labor market pretty soon. So there is actually, I think, no CEO from a big AI company that denies the near future of having like this big struggle, the societal struggle about the impact, right? So this is the first thing. But I mean, you're bringing up a very, very difficult but interesting question at the same time. So we are seeing technological developments for centuries already, right? But humans always created new jobs. They were also like new tasks being born, new ideas being generated, and new labor was created, right? So why should it be different this time? And I think this is what I try to explain with the difference between quantitative development and qualitative development. So in the history of mankind, technology always increased the performance, the productivity of human labor, but it was always human in the process, in the loop of production that was like creating the value, that was creating the goods. Robots, for example, they were always lacking of this little thing that made them useful in production. And what they were lacking for was AI, actually. So like the combination
intelligence.
Exactly, intelligence. In a way, general intelligence, not in the way of AGI, but being generally applicable, right? In every process, not being this narrow-minded intelligence. And this is the qualitative change, the qualitative difference that we're facing and seeing, and that is coming to us very, very, very soon, right? It's like the first time in human history, there is an intelligence embodied and robotic that looks like a human, that works like a human, but actually is completely artificial. It's like we have the AI embodied in the robot, and this is the first time that we can have like a machine working longer than a human, working more precise, having more endure, doesn't need any breaks, no holidays. And I think this is the crucial part of why it's becoming cheaper than human labor. And since we're living in capitalism, there is no choice of companies to replace human labor with the robotics. I think this is the crucial point, the qualitative change we're seeing.
Right. So it makes sense. And I fully agree with what you're saying. Are we ready for that though? So, and the way I want to frame this question for you is we need a lot of data, and we need a lot of processing of that data, and we need a lot of energy to power the processing of all that data in order for this to actually happen. We also need a lot of brand new manufacturing capabilities to create what you're talking about, basically replacing the labor market with, robots and other things. So there's a lot of things that the world is not yet set up for this to happen, which is why I continue to come back to the question of, does this really happen next year or the year after that? Or do we need many years and many changes geopolitically, many changes with regulation, et cetera, to sort of enable the world for this to actually be able to happen? Like, this is why I kind of think, hey, you know what? Maybe there's still a few years out before we can build what we're talking about here. What's your take on that in terms of the timelines and what I just mentioned?
So, of course, I have no idea. I can just promote my ideas I have, but it would be absurd to tell you, hey, this is what's happening and this is what we're seeing next year and the year after and so on. But this is what I think will likely happen. So what are we seeing at the moment? We're seeing an unprecedented way of investments we've never seen it in history. It's like it outperforms the Manhattan Project by a vast amount, right? So it's not my stand that I think AI will be a technological revolution that we're all providing from, but I think it's like a highly politicized way of thinking that AI and robotic really will have an impact. I mean, the whole S&P 500 is actually driven by AI in the way that it's on data center, right? So the investment data centers is the only source of having the S&P 500 not going down in recession. But you're right. We actually need data center, and almost every CEO of the big AI company is telling the same story. They're lacking of compute. We're lacking of compute. But I think there's an even bigger bottleneck, which is energy, right? So this is actually a very interesting situation because I think the European Union has the biggest problem in this geopolitical struggle, right? So China, for example, is investing in vast amount of money and force into developing nuclear plants, but also renewable energies. They're outpacing the United States. The United States, on the other hand, also invests massive amounts in nuclear plants, also renewable energies, but also fossil fuels. But the real problem the European Union is facing, for example, Germany as the biggest economic power in Europe, tried to get rid of all the nuclear power in the 90s. And went full into renewable energies. I mean, it made sense from their point of view. But the problem with the renewable energies actually is they're much too volatile, right? Since you can't save that high amount of energy, and data center need like this constant way of having energy to work and fuel their data centers, it's not really possible to build them reliable in Germany. I mean, there's France, right? They have like a few nuclear plants they're running, but it's not enough. So we're lacking of chips, we're lacking of compute, and Europe is lacking of energy. So this could definitely be the biggest obstacle, especially when we're looking how AI is developing. At the moment, there's still like the saying that just scaling more and more and more will result in better and better models. And I think this is true in a way, but we're maybe facing like, I don't know if we're facing a wall in the near future. Actually, there's the saying there isn't a wall. But like Demis Hassabis recently reiterated, there need to be much more like improvements, maybe algorithmic improvements to develop something like AGI, right?
Right.
But here I want to quote Dario Amodei. I think he wrote it in a blog, but I'm actually not so sure. But even if we would stop developing AI today, even if we just stop it and don't develop it any further, it still would have a huge impact because the industry just started incorporating into their workforces, into the working process, right? So it's not only that we're still developing these tools and they're still getting better and better, but we just barely started integrating them. Right. So, and I think this is, sorry.
I was just going to say, I actually had this conversation this morning with my team because we were talking about the same thing, which is like, hey, look, even if they don't make the models any better, we still only have about 800 million people who use AI and right. And there can be billions more. And it's like most companies have just started like the tip of the iceberg of actually implementing this stuff. And so you don't have to make these models better at all. There's still so much more room to grow in terms of the usage of this. And so it's like there's still so much to be untapped, which is a good thing. It means a good thing for probably earnings of a lot of companies, but it probably means we still need a lot more infrastructure build out to power all this, right? Which means we need a lot more energy. Let's go on the geopolitical side because I do want to get your insights here. So there's a geopolitical battle in the sense of, one, obviously the companies in China or the companies in the US really want to continue to invest in this and build things out. But they're kind of being held back right now from regulation, from the government, because they can't access energy. You talked about it in Europe already. There's problems there. And so they need the politicians to act and change so that the companies can win. But at the same time, the countries themselves, they need to make some changes because they need to win this for like economic security, right? National security in terms of military, right? If we ever have another war, we're not sending humans into war. We're sending humanoid robots and drones, et cetera, et cetera. So what's your take on sort of the geopolitical race that we're having right now? You've talked a little bit about there's China, there's US, there's Europe. Europe seems to be the one that's maybe lagging the most. I think we mostly hear about China and the US. How do you think this plays out over the coming years? Is there going to be a winner between them all? Or is it going to just be a gruesome battle over the coming years? Or what's your kind of thinking on how this plays out?
It's very difficult to actually see what's happening behind the closed doors. And what do I mean by this? I know no one who would have expected China to not only keep up, but to overtake the open source market so quickly and with such high amount of performance. And this happened although they were embargoed from all the big chips there is, right? So the United States only sold like these H20 chips from NVIDIA, and they were like very, very weak, too weak to really train good models to compare them with the US models, ChatGPT, Claude, you name it. But still, they tackled this problem. They figured out smart ways. Just remember DeepSeek R1 in January. It just the whole market exploded for a few weeks because everyone thought, okay, there is not that much need of compute than they were expecting, right? So although China is still pretty much cut off from the market, they're advancing and developing their own market in a way that was not expected. There is this amazing book from Chris Miller, Chip War, where he unfolds the story of the chip production. And actually, he proposed the thesis, since China does not have access to ASMLs. So in the Netherlands, they were the lithography machines produced and sent to TSMC, the biggest producer of global chip production. Since China does not have any access to these machines, they aren't able to develop their own chips in near quality anytime soon, right? We're talking about 10 to 15 years. They should be behind in chip production. But for some reason, Huawei, this mobile phone company, actually now in developing their own chips, the Ascend chips, they're performing almost on the same performance as the H100s. I know NVIDIA is much further than just H100, but still, they're keeping up at an amazing pace, insanely speed. So it's so difficult to anticipate where the situation will develop. And at the same time, China is so much more interested in trying all the creativity, like robotics, for example. There's several different robotic companies, and they're producing them en masse. So this is the look on China. The United States, on the other hand, have this vast amount of investments, much, much more than China ever could in the near future invest, right? They have Project Stargate, they have this Colossus, XAI data center, and they have all the access to TSMC's production chains, right? So at the moment, it looks like they're in the lead in producing. And I think it was just recently or today that the newly called Department of War just wrote a tweet that they now have this like new models for all their warriors for the military. So and you're absolutely right. AI is not only like a tool that impacts the economy, like the labor market, but it's in national security that is reiterated from the politics every time again. What I think is, I mean, it's actually a race for AGI, right? So having like this best AI technology in the near future means having like the holy grail in their hands, right? Having this holy grail means not only economic prosperity, but also like this huge advancement in the military complex. And at the moment, it looks like the United States is a little bit ahead. China is keeping up. Europe, on the other hand, is absolutely cut off, right? There's no chance.
Way behind.
Sadly, I wish it would be otherwise, but I don't think there is any chance Europe is keeping up.
Is there any other countries in this race? We've talked about China, Europe, and US. No one else is really even up there?
No.
Okay, sorry.
No.
Continue.
So I've read about India trying also by like...
That's what I was wondering.
Good amount of chips, but actually it's between it's actually only between the United States and China, right? So, and just a fun fact aside, I mean the biggest cutoff for Europe were through the Ukraine war, because Germany and Europe relied so heavily on the cheap gas as an energy source, which would be very good for data centers, right? You could just use this gas to fire up all these data centers. But since the Ukraine war and the Nord Stream 2 was like exploded, they now rely on this very, very expensive LNG from the United States. So they're absolutely cut off. It's absolutely only between China and the United States.
You are listening to the Milk Road AI podcast, and And I just want to remind you, we actually are building Milk Road AI Pro, which is set to debut very soon, where you are going to get very in-depth reports about the industry. This thing is going to be so good, Milk Road AI Pro, that we're actually going to be releasing the first 2 reports free on our website. So you have to sign up for the newsletter. Check it out in the link below.
Very interesting. It's one other question on this, actually. We've talked about how they're going to be this huge build out, whether it's data centers and energy, and China and the US both spending as much money as they possibly can. The US is in the in trillions of dollars they're spending, as you just mentioned. Do you think that you remember when the .com build out happened and we were building all the fiber and we sort of overbuilt, and then all of a sudden it was like, we don't have enough here, and everything collapsed. And eventually it came back many years later. A lot of people were kind of thinking, hey, we're in an AI bubble. The last month was everyone debating we're in an AI bubble. I think it's pretty clear we're not right now. Do you think we have that moment of like, we overbuilt? Or do you think we're always going to be struggling to build enough to keep up with the demand of the things that we're creating with AI?
So I think we're actually, in a way, we are in a bubble and we are not in a bubble. So we are in a bubble because I think venture capital is funding almost everything that has like the name AI inside of it, right? So if you name your company AI, whatever, you'll get like millions or even billions funded. So I think that there will be a correction in the very near future. But it's actually not a bubble, because in comparison to the .com bubble, AI really has a use case and is already implemented into the economy. I mean, there is the Nobel Prize winner of economy, Dario Acemoglu. I hope I pronounced his name right. He's like this Turkish economic scientist who says, even though AI is like a revolution, we won't see any big increase in like global GDP. But actually, as far as I know, he's the only one proposing this thesis. I think AI is already too big to fail. It has to happen and it has to work out. Like I already said, if there weren't these vast amount of investments in this CapEx investments in data center, even the United States were already in a big recession. So everyone went in, everything is invested in AI. It needs to happen, or this whole economy will collapse. Looking at the global economy, it's like a global stagnation. There's also a need for this AI revolution, right? So 100%. since the Fordism, right, this broad prosperity and a new way of producing goods, AI is needed for the global economy to like.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And also, I think people tend to forget a lot of our most prominent nations have aging populations, right? And so a lot of them are leaving the labor market. And so it's why we have to print a lot of money, is to keep the world and keep the economies productive. And so AI is actually maybe a solution for that. So there's also a net good that's coming from all this artificial intelligence as well. Let's go back to sort of the products being built with AI. Let's get out of the geopolitical realm for a second here. I would say the first sort of stage of AI here has been, as you mentioned earlier in the show, all about chatbots. This is what a lot of people just think that AI is, right? It's ChatGPT or it's Gemini or it's Grok. And that really was the huge, big moment for AI, right? We went to 800 million users in like, I don't know, less than a year. It was crazy fast. What's the next big unlock that happens in AI? Like, meaning what's around the corner for us? Maybe even it's in 2026. I don't know. There's like, is it fully self-driving cars? Tesla's getting pretty damn close. I test drove one a couple weeks ago and it was absolutely incredible. Is that the big thing in 2026? Is it something completely different? What is your thoughts on like, what's the big unlock that comes next after these chats?
I don't think even it's that important. Maybe it's agentic AI. Maybe it's like having AI doing so many more tasks on its own, like solving problems, maybe mathematic problems. But I think what we should look for is the implementation of AI. So we're now in the year 2025, and AI is still like this experimental thing, right? So many companies are just trying it out, figuring out how it works, and maybe even bring it into the process. In the working process. But I think what will happen is next year, the companies will figure out a way how to make their process even more productive, to bring it into their human labor and make a use out of it. And I think this is where we should keep a focus on. Like in comparison, like the reasoning models, we didn't even expect them. I mean, there was this rumors about Project Strawberry or Q-Star, what it was named, but nobody actually expected it to happen. And then it went out and it was like this revolution in inside of this AI revolution happening. So actually, I don't know what will happen, right? But I know that we'll face this implementation of AI, and this will literally change everything.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I do think fully self-driving is going to have its moment in 2026.
Yeah,
I don't know if you
absolutely.
agree with that. There's a lot of people
Yeah.
skeptical, but I think it's coming in
Really?
2026.
I mean, we can have a look at China, right? And there's like full self-driving. It's at an absolutely enormous level already happening. So I think the problem even is they rely too much on it. So I've read that car companies, yeah, exactly. They need to pull back a little bit because it's so widely used there.
Very interesting. Okay, let's start to wrap up here. But one question I just want to have, this will help our listeners sort of understand how you look at maybe the markets of AI. Is there an area in AI that you think is super overvalued right now? Maybe that's the industrial complex, so the building out of data centers that got really hot in 2025. It's now pulled back a bit. Is it, the Meg 7, like our Googles and that of the world? Maybe it's something completely different. And is there areas that you think are super undervalued, whether this is like in terms of markets or even just attention? What do you think is kind of undervalued and overvalued in the AI world currently?
I mean, it's so actually, and I think this is a very thin ice where I'm moving, but I could see that actually OpenAI is highly overvalued. So because they heavily rely on B2C markets, and only I think 3 to 5% of their subscribers are paying for the service. So they heavily need a new revenue source. They're experimenting with ads. And as far as I know, the community is actually very, very much against having ads. There were like these tests, although it was denied by OpenAI. But if I'm frankly speaking, I think they were kind of ads. Even in the Plus tier, in the Plus subscription. And it will be very, very hard in the competition for OpenAI to keep up, especially with Google, since Gemini 3.0. And they were like now the absolute shining star in the AI scene. I mean, OpenAI tries to keep up with their newly GPT 5.2, which should be released in the next few days. But it will be very, very difficult for OpenAI to keep up. And I mean, there were also these rumors that OpenAI also tries to do like going public in the very near future. But since Anthropic already promoting their IPO for 2026, and I actually see a better use case for Claude in the B2B sector, which generates them very good revenue already, it will be very difficult for OpenAI to keep up. So from my take, Anthropic could be undervalued, OpenAI, on the other hand, even overvalued.
Interesting. And for context, for those that are listening, OpenAI, I think, was looking to IPO at $1 trillion. Anthropic was like 350 million. So maybe you just need to flip that.
Exactly.
Anthropic can go to the trillion, OpenAI down to 350.
Exactly.
I love that. Let's just ask one final question for you. 12 months from now, we'll get you back on the show. What's one prediction that you think is going to happen in the AI space within 12 months from now?
Yeah. So I've said this a couple of times, and I fear that people get bored of me saying this over and over again. But I think we really, really need to have the discussions about the labor market and our society and the way we as a society want to live together. I think the discussions about UBI or maybe even universal general income will advance at a very, very rapid pace. I mean, even Elon Musk recently promoted these ideas of universal general income, or even promoted the ideas that we don't need to work for money anymore in the near future. So I think in the next 12 months, we really will have this discussion, but more in a more serious way. It's not like as an idea how we could live in a sci-fi way, like in Star Trek, but like seeing really, really heavy impacts on the labor market, massive layoffs, and we're doing this discussions about how we as a society want to live in the near future and how we want to have our economy run.
I'm just going to sneak in here and interrupt and tell you that if you're listening to this show at this point, you need to like and subscribe. And you know what? Leave a comment. Tell these guys what you think about what they're saying. Tell them if you agree or not, or if they're totally wrong. Stick it to them while you're here, but make sure you actually subscribe to the channel first.
Interesting. Okay, let me ask you one question. We did not discuss this beforehand, so if you don't want to answer this, this is fine. Where do you think unemployment is going to be in 12 months from now? Because it sounds like you're on the very negative side of this. Do you like? I think it's what 4
Oh no!
percent right now. How?
Oh no! I don't want to sound negative. I mean, okay, no. So okay, let me explain it. So having like unemployment rate of 10 to 20%, like Dario Amate reiterates, I think this is realistic. But so this is the crucial point. Yes, it is a problem in our society, in our economic system. But actually, this is an amazing thing. We are being freed from labor. We're being freed from being forced to work for money, for our living. This is an opportunity that is being created in front of us. So this is what I'm trying to focus on. We need to discuss how we as a society want to live together, or how our economy should look like, right?
Right.
Not having to work doesn't mean humans don't want to work. Humans are like, there's this German word, Gattungswesen, right? So which means humans want to express themselves. Even if you don't need to work, for a hobby, you're doing like woodworking, or you're a musician for a hobby, right? Humans want to express themselves, but we are being relieved from having to work, from the necessity. And I think this is the positive aspect. Yes, there's a danger of being laid off and don't have any money for your living anymore, but having this opportunity to create a new society, a new way of living, this is a big possibility and a big opportunity I would like to promote a little bit more.
Okay. I like that. And I just want to build off that for those that are like, well, how does that make sense? How are we just going to not work? And I think I did an episode with Salim Ismail a few weeks back, and he sort of talked about this as well. And basically he said, look, we're going to a world of abundance, and this is going to make the cost of everything go to near zero, right? And then the innovation we're going to have on energy means that energy is going to eventually go to near zero too. This isn't by tomorrow or whatever, but we're basically going to make energy cost nothing and the production of goods cost nothing. And in that world, you don't need as much money as we think of today. Money is going to be thought of very differently, which again, we had in that conversation. So I'd recommend the listeners go check that out. But I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that helps the listeners go, oh, actually, okay, this whole 10% unemployment isn't the end of the world. It's actually the beginning of something great.
Absolutely. Exactly.
It's just some change. Yeah,
exactly.
Very cool.
And I mean, there are so many developments in the pipeline we didn't even talk about. For example, fusion energy. It's like the biggest opportunity we of humanity have for creating cheap, reliable energy in a way never seen before. It outpaces every other reliable source there is, right? And not only AI, but connecting it to fusion energy could create like this world of abundance you just mentioned. And I think this is something we just keep in mind when pushing forward this technology and development.
I love it. Well, we'll leave the audience with that more positive, optimistic note. Kim, thanks so much for joining. You have an incredible brain, and you're a deep thinker on AI. Thank you very much. We absolutely love to learn from you. Where can others learn more from you? Just tell us your Twitter account and your newsletter. We'll of course link it below, but if you want to just say it real quick, and so those can find it, that'd be great.
Yeah, well, it's actually chubby, and the tag is at Chemonism.
You got it. And the newsletter is called Superintelligence, so make sure you check that out. And again, the link will be in the show notes below. Kim, thank you again so much for joining us. This was fantastic. For the others that are listening, make sure to check out our next episode. We're doing this weekly. And thank you so much for being here and listening. Don't forget to subscribe. And thanks everyone for joining. This was a blast, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Want to stay ahead of the biggest technological shift in history? Subscribe now to get insights straight from the sharpest minds in tech and finance. Quickly, you'll note this show's for educational purposes only. Nothing here is financial advice. Investing always carries risk. Never invest more than you can afford to lose. Thanks for tuning in. See you in the next one.